Hi, this is Meredith Lego, and I'm doing a series of channeled teachings from Ascended Master Hilarion. And just if you haven't seen any previous videos, channeling is really the process of connecting into energy and to consciousness. That's all it is. And in some cases, you could be doing it with energy in like around you. So for the example, that's essentially, like you could tap into, let's say, fellow family members, or anytime you sort of have an inkling that somebody's about to call before they call, that's essentially channeling, if you will. And in other cases, channeling can be connecting into different kind of multidimensional consciousnesses that, let's say, doesn't exist in this dimensional plane that we exist in. And that's essentially what I've done here. So Ascended Master Hilarion is basically ascended. He's sort of a master of ascension in the sense that he's ascended the reincarnational pattern that we go through as part of a learning journey, if you will, inside of a school, so that we can slowly evolve our consciousness over time. I'm currently talking right now in kind of a series of videos about the concept of reincarnation and how it is that we sort of plan out what we're trying to accomplish in each life, and how that kind of helps us on our journey. And a huge, really important concept that seemed to come up with Hilarion as he was teaching me was the concept of free will. And free will actually came up quite as a big theme on some previous videos that I did teaching around the concept of polarity. And just for any of you who haven't seen them, I'll try and post those videos in the content or description box. But polarity is the kind of extreme differences of energies that we operate in today. So you've got high vibrational frequencies like, let's say, love and completeness, all the way to lower vibrational frequencies like sort of apathy or fear or anger. And it also works as well with foods. So foods also have different vibrational frequencies. Like, for example, high alkaline foods like, let's say, kale, or any sort of leafy greens is going to have a higher vibrational frequency than highly processed sugary foods has a very low vibrational frequency. Same thing with like temperatures, hot and cold. So the point is that we obviously have a range of different frequencies that we kind of exist in this sort of construct, holographic construct that we find ourselves in to learn through. And the point is that we have the free will choice of what particular energies we want to engage in and learn through, because that's how we, as a fractal of consciousness, learns and then can share it back with consciousness, so that the ultimate goal is to reduce entropy and create more efficiency and evolution. So with that backdrop, in this particular channeling session, which I basically did, it looks like it was in December of 2020, I asked Hilarion, explain the concept of free will and why it is so important. So this is kind of a lengthy answer, but I think it was an important one just to understand like his fundamental definition of it, so that I had shared identity with him around this concept. So his answer is that free will is the ability to think, behave, act, and have emotional feelings in accordance with one's own choices, unrestricted from demand or definition by another. That seemed intuitive when it was coming through, because that's what I thought of as sort of free will. And, as an aside, within our society, we're always, always in a situation where we're being challenged or put into situations or test scenarios of, taking our own free will choice or being forced into a situation by another. So he's saying here is that really free will is your ability to think, behave, act, and have an emotional feeling in accordance with your own choices, completely unrestricted from the demands or definition by another. It is standing in all your glory as a divine being, expressing the way your higher self wishes to express in manifestation. So again, this is your higher self wanting to express this way and have a manifested experience. No one or nothing can take away free will. There are those in the past and even today who try and control free will, but it is impossible to root out the freedom of feelings, thoughts, and creation. So even, I think what he's saying here is that you could be locked up. You can have an experience where you're sort of locked up. That still, you still have the ability to have certain feelings and thoughts and creation, even in those scenarios. It's totally impossible for somebody to take away free will. And I'm sure that there are many people out there that are really trying to do that. And sort of more on the conspiracy theory side, I'm sure that's probably some of the goals that MK Ultra projects were trying to go down, basically. And you see it play out quite a bit in society right now. So it's definitely, the concept of sort of control versus free will is, I think, a scenario that we will continue to see and be tested in as we are sort of beings in sort of a holographic simulation until we totally master the letting go of fear. Frankly, I think that's part of it. So he goes on to say that free will is a fundamental design of the simulation learning school humans and third dimensional beings operate within. For it is through free will that a being truly understands and learns. And I would also say, as an aside, that free will isn't just in the third dimensional plane. It actually exists in other dimensions. But he's just referencing it here for my benefit. So he goes on to say that a father can explain to a child why it is wise not to touch a fire, but he cannot take away the desire within the mind or the actions of a child to touch the fire. The allowance of free will provides the child an ability to learn through experience and the consequences on the physical body. So, again, even in scenarios where you have, let's say, governments or parents or teachers or whatever the case may be, basically you can't do that. You're still going to have individuals that still desire or want to have sort of the free will choice to do it. They will go out of their way to have that experience because that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And I see this play out all the time with like parents and children. Obviously, usually the parents have more wisdom, but at the end of the day, sometimes the children really have to go through that experience to learn. Another aspect of free will is the constant choice to follow or not to flow with the intended direction of the higher self. So I think what he's saying here is that so you have you have the allowance of free will in order to make choices, in order to have experiences. But at the same time, when you come into an incarnation, your higher self has basically sort of put down a learning plan, which, as an aside, would suggest that we're never really a victim to our kind of circumstance or our situation. But even in that scenario, let's say your higher self sort of put down the desire to have a certain learning plan to work on, a certain lesson or to have a certain experience. The ego personality of the individual still has a free will choice not to listen to the subtle hints that are coming in from the higher self and go down that path. And I can tell you there's been many times where I know that a signal is coming in from my higher self to do something, and I intentionally ignore it and don't act upon it. So I still, and that's my ego personality kind of stepping in. So I still am sort of instituting free will choice in that particular moment. So just to repeat that statement, another aspect of free will is the constant choice to follow or not to flow with the intended direction of the higher self. To say more on this topic, the higher self plans each incarnation in excruciating detail with the intention to learn, build skills through experience, expand or evolve consciousness, and give back to others. When in a life incarnation, That plan is often expressed by the higher self to the avatar body through a series of feelings. So that's really important. The way that you can really pick up to what your higher self wants to do is actually by tuning in very strongly to your feelings, and especially to the things that bring you joy. So if you really want to do something and don't want to do something else, follow the thing that you want to do, because that's usually your higher self giving a signal to you. So if the higher self planned to experience a lesson for growth through independence, as an example, the manifested physical body may have a strong feeling to execute an action that would result in having independence, such as a teenager leaving her parents or a husband divorcing a spouse. So those are just kind of like really stark examples, but that's kind of what came through as I was channeling this. So he goes on to say that despite the feelings manifested directly from the higher self, the being always has the choice to follow through on the feeling. There is no harm or judgment in not following through on the feeling, only the realization that the higher self will work to experience the lesson through another way, whether in this incarnation or a future incarnation. And that was kind of a big wake-up call, because, at some point on my kind of awakening journey, I got frustrated about the whole concept of having to incarnate again and again. And I'm like, this sucks. I mean, to be perfectly honest, why does this have to happen? But as I began to understand more and more of it, I found that there was sort of beauty in the setup for that, and kind of why it happens. And, did realize really through having gone through some past life regression sessions, exactly some, let's say, lessons that my higher self wanted me to experience that I didn't, learn the first time. And so I understand why I'm going through them now. But it's, your higher self is going to figure out how to learn it. So I think the lesson there is when you get tuned, when you learn to tune into your higher self and you are hearing something, it's sort of better to go through that. Otherwise, you will have to go through it again, or you will choose to go through it again. Not your ego, your higher self. So he goes on to say that the ego personality might have avoided acting upon a feeling that creates anxiety or fear of the unknown, but the higher self knows no fear and will choose to plan another nexus point for the experience. So a manifested life is both a realization of much planned efforts and the free will of the personality. As a being progresses through the stages of ascension, the small ego personality fades away and the higher self assumes full control of the physical manifestation. Free will is rarely applied, with the exception of recognizing the free will of all living and non-living conscious beings. And that's kind of all he ended up talking about on that topic. And I thought that was pretty interesting, is that, over time, as you continue to evolve, your ego personality fades away, your higher self, so almost a direct kind of stream from consciousness itself, is really then taking, kind of assuming more control of the avatar body. And, this individual is going to go through life having complete confidence, complete knowing of themselves, complete ability to be themselves and not live in fear of who they are. Complete ability to act upon all passions that they have, complete ability to have compassion and awareness of others through the process, but also likely be very aware of energies that they need in order to kind of execute sort of the actions. And I think the last statement was pretty meaningful, which is, so when you get to that point where you're more connected directly to your higher self, you are your higher self, free will is rarely applied, in the sense that you don't have the struggle between the ego, the personality, and the higher self, because you are really the higher self sort of enacting on a day-to-day basis, with the exception of recognizing that free will of all living and non-living conscious beings is key. And I think that is really lost on a lot of people, especially in society today. is that there's such a desire to control, mostly through fear, driven from fear of what others sort of think, feel, act, and how they behave. And that's a complete disregard, is my understanding, for just the importance of free will in the whole sort of learning construct. So I thought this was a very important lesson or teaching. Is again just what free will kind of serves as part of the learning experience, and how important it is to recognize the free will choices of others. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the content. If it resonates with you, that's great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Obviously, your free will choice not to watch this. So, but if it does, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and sign up for notifications of when I'm posting, because you'll get alerts around it. So, thanks very much, and have a great rest of your day.